He saw them crossing the street. 3 identical faces, his eyes, his blood, his son's. 4 years of life he never knew existed. His fiancée's voice shattered the silence. Who are they? But the real question wasn't who they were. It was what he would do now. Because the woman holding their hands had run from him 5 years ago, and she had a reason. A reason that could destroy everything. His empire, his engagement, his entire life. He was about to lose it all. Or maybe he was about to find everything he never knew he needed. The city never slept. It pulsed with neon and noise, with deals made in shadows and debts paid in silence. Jae-sung moved through it like a king through his kingdom, untouchable, unshaken, unchallenged. 32 years old, cold-eyed, sharp-suited, feared. He had built an empire from blood and calculation, and tonight he wore its crown without question. His fiancée, Isabella Laurent, sat beside him in the back seat of the black luxury sedan, her diamond engagement ring catching the streetlights like a declaration of victory. She was perfect, polished, wealthy, connected, everything a man in his position needed. The dinner was flawless, Isabella said, her French accent soft and satisfied. Your associates were impressed. Jae-sung nodded once, his gaze fixed on the window. They should be. She leaned closer, her perfume expensive and deliberate. We make a powerful pair, don't we? He didn't answer. Not because he disagreed, but because his mind had already moved to the next negotiation, the next territory, the next threat to eliminate. Power was a language he spoke fluently. Love was a word he had long ago deleted from his vocabulary. The car slowed at a red light. The city blurred into pedestrians and taillights, into lives that didn't matter, and faces he would never remember. Until one face stopped time. She was crossing the street, head down, hair pulled back, worn jacket over faded jeans, and holding her hands, 3 small boys, identical. Dark hair, round faces, wide eyes. Jae-sung's chest locked. His breath caught somewhere between his lungs and his throat, trapped in a space that no longer existed. Because those eyes, those faces, they were his. The boys looked up as they reached the curb, their small heads turning in unison, their gazes sweeping across the row of stopped cars. And for one impossible second, one of them looked directly at him. Jae-sung's hand gripped the armrest so hard his knuckles went white. The woman, his ex, didn't look up. She didn't see him. She just guided the boys forward, her movements careful and protective, her body a shield between them and the world. His world. Jay? Isabella's voice cut through the fog in his head. Are you all right? He didn't move, didn't blink. The light turned green. The driver eased the car forward, and Jae-sung's past walked away into the night, 3 identical pieces of his soul disappearing into the crowd. Isabella followed his gaze, her eyes narrowing. Do you know them? Her voice was sharper now, suspicious. Jae-sung forced himself to breathe, forced his face into the mask he wore so well. Blank, controlled, untouchable. No. But the word tasted like a lie. Because he did know them. Or at least, he knew her. Yuna. The girl he had loved 5 years ago, before he became what he was now. Before the empire. Before the blood. Before he learned that love was a weakness men like him couldn't afford. He had left her. Walked away without explanation, without apology, without looking back. It was the only way to protect her. From him. From his enemies. From the life that would have swallowed her whole. But now, 3 boys. Identical. 4 years old. The math was brutal and undeniable. Isabella's hand touched his arm, her fingers cold and insistent. Jay. Who were they? He turned to her slowly, his face a stone mask. No one. But inside, the empire he had built so carefully was beginning to crack. Because those boys weren't no one. They were everything. And he had just lost 5 years of their lives. Jae-sung didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse office. The city sprawled beneath him like a chessboard. the lights flickering like captured stars. His empire, his fortress, his prison. On the desk in front of him sat a single photograph, old, creased, hidden in a drawer he hadn't opened in years. Yuna, smiling, young, untouched by the violence of his world. He remembered the way she used to look at him, like he was something more than a weapon, like he was human. He had destroyed that, walked away to save her. And now, 5 years later, she was raising 3 sons alone, his sons. The word felt foreign in his mouth. Dangerous. He had never imagined himself as a father, had never wanted to be. Men in his position didn't build families, they built dynasties, and dynasties required sacrifice. But those eyes, those 3 identical faces, they had shattered something inside him he didn't know still existed. A sharp knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in." His right-hand man, Min-jun, stepped inside, his expression carefully neutral. "The surveillance team has the information you requested." Jae-sung's jaw tightened. He had made calls the moment he returned home. Quiet calls, discreet inquiries. Within 2 hours, he knew everything. Yuna Park, 28 years old. Working 2 jobs, a bakery during the day, a convenience store at night. Living in a modest apartment in a neighborhood far from the wealth and danger of his world. And 3 sons. Twins, the report had said at first. But Jae-sung had seen the truth with his own eyes. Triplets, born 4 years and 3 months ago. The timeline fit perfectly. She had been pregnant when he left, and she had never told him. Anything else? Jae-sung's voice was cold, controlled. Min-jun hesitated. She has no criminal record, no connections to rival organizations. She's clean. Of course she was. Yuna had always been the opposite of his world. Soft where he was hard. Light where he was shadow. That's why he had left, to keep her that way. "And the boys?" Jae-sung asked quietly. Min-jun's expression flickered. Enrolled in a small preschool. Healthy. Well cared for. She's doing her best. Jae-sung's chest tightened. Doing her best. Alone. While he had been building an empire, she had been raising their sons in silence. Leave the report on the desk. Min-jun nodded and turned to go, but paused at the door. "Sir, what do you want to do?" Jae-sung didn't answer, because he didn't know. For the first time in his life, he didn't have a plan. The next morning, Isabella arrived at the penthouse unannounced. She swept into his office like a storm, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her eyes sharp and calculating. "We need to talk." Jae-sung leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "About?" "About the woman and the children you pretended not to know." His silence was answer enough. Isabella's jaw tightened. "I had my people look into it. Yuna Park, your ex-girlfriend, and 3 boys who look exactly like you." She dropped a folder onto his desk. Photographs, birth certificates, school records, all the proof she needed. "You have children, Jae." Her voice was ice. "And you didn't think to mention it before proposing to me?" Jae-sung's gaze didn't waver. "I didn't know." Isabella laughed, bitter and sharp. "You didn't know? Or you didn't care?" "I didn't know." The words came out harder than he intended. Isabella stared at him, her eyes searching his face for something. Remorse, guilt, fear. But all she saw was stone. "So what now?" she demanded. "You're just going to..." "What? Pretend they don't exist?" Jae-sung stood slowly, his presence filling the room like a warning. "That's not your concern." "Not my concern?" Isabella's voice rose. "I'm your fiancée, Jae. Everything about you is my concern." He stepped closer, his eyes cold and final. "Then understand this, Isabella. What I do about them is my decision, not yours." For a moment she looked like she might argue. But then she saw it, the shift in his eyes, the edge that reminded her exactly who she was dealing with. A man who didn't negotiate. A man who didn't bend. She grabbed her purse and turned toward the door, her voice trembling with fury. "You're going to lose everything, Jay. Your empire, your reputation, me." She paused at the threshold, her back to him. "And for what? 3 children you don't even know?" The door closed behind her, and Jae-sung stood alone in the silence, staring at the photograph of Yuna on his desk. For what? He didn't have an answer. But for the first time in 5 years, he wanted to find one. Jae-sung found her at the bakery. It was early morning, the city still half asleep, the streets quiet except for the hum of delivery trucks and the distant clatter of opening shops. The bakery was small, warm, the kind of place that smelled like butter and hope. He stood across the street, hidden behind the tinted windows of his car, and watched her through the glass. Yuna. She moved with the same quiet grace he remembered, her hands shaping dough, her face focused and calm. She looked older, tired, but still her. Still the girl who had once made him believe he could be something other than a monster. "Sir," Minjun said quietly from the driver's seat. "What do you want to do?" Jae-sung didn't answer. He just watched. And for the first time in years, he felt something other than control. He felt fear. Not of enemies or betrayal or death, but of the truth. Of what he had lost. Of what he might never get back. "Wait here," Jae-sung said, opening the door. Minjun's eyes widened. "Sir, are you sure? Wait, here." The command left no room for argument. Jae-sung stepped out into the cool morning air and crossed the street, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since he was a boy facing his first real fight. The bell above the bakery door chimed softly as he entered. Yuna looked up from behind the counter and froze, her hands stilled, her breath caught. Her entire body went rigid, like she had just seen a ghost. And maybe she had, because the man standing in front of her wasn't the boy she had loved 5 years ago. He was something darker, colder, more dangerous. But his eyes were the same. Yuna. Her name left his lips like a prayer. She took a step back, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" He didn't move closer, didn't push. Just stood there, letting the weight of 5 years settle between them. "I saw you," he said quietly. "Last night, at the crosswalk." Her face went pale. "You need to leave." "I saw them, Yuna." Her eyes filled with something between panic and fury. "Leave. Now." But Jae-sung didn't move. "Are they mine?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Yuna's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "You left." Her voice cracked, raw and broken. "You walked away without a word, Jay. You don't get to come back now and ask questions." He took one step forward, his voice low and steady. "Are they mine?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, but her voice was steel. "Yes." The word hit him like a bullet. "Why didn't you tell me?" Yuna laughed, bitter and sharp. "Tell you? How, Jay? You disappeared, changed your number, became this." She gestured at him, at the expensive suit, the cold eyes, the danger that radiated from him like heat. "You became someone I didn't recognize. Someone I couldn't reach. Someone who would have put our sons in danger just by existing. Our sons." The words wrapped around his chest like chains. "I would have protected them." "From what?" Yuna's voice rose. "From your enemies? From your world? From you?" The accusation landed hard, because she was right. "I left to protect you," Jae-sung said quietly, "and I stayed away to protect them." Silence fell between them, heavy and unbreakable. Finally, Yuna wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "You need to go, Jay. And you need to stay away. They don't know who you are, and they never will. You can't keep them from me. Watch me." Her voice was final. Jae-sung stared at her for a long moment, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. Then he turned and walked toward the door. But before he left, he looked back. "I'm not leaving, Yuna. Not this time." The bell chimed as the door closed behind him. and Yuna collapsed against the counter, her hands shaking, her heart shattered all over again. Because she knew him, and she knew that when Jae-sung made a promise, he kept it, even if it destroyed them both. The days that followed were a silent war. Jae-sung didn't leave, didn't disappear, didn't retreat back into the shadows of his empire like Yuna had hoped he would. Instead, he became a presence, not intrusive, not aggressive, but undeniable. Every morning, a black car appeared across the street from the bakery. It never moved, never approached, just waited, like a question mark etched into the fabric of her daily life. Yuna felt his eyes on her even when she couldn't see him. She felt the weight of his determination pressing against the fragile walls she had built around herself and her sons, and it terrified her. Not because she thought he would hurt them, but because she knew, deep in the part of her heart that had never stopped loving him, that he could destroy everything she had worked so hard to protect. The boys noticed the car too. "Mama," Teo, the oldest by 3 minutes, asked one morning as they walked to preschool. "Why is that car always there?" Yuna's chest tightened. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just someone who works nearby." But Teo's eyes, so achingly identical to his father's, narrowed with suspicion far too mature for a 4-year-old. "He's watching us." Yuna knelt down, her hands cupping his small face. "You're safe, Tae. I promise. Mama will always keep you safe." He nodded slowly, but doubt flickered in his gaze. Her sons were smart. Too smart. And she knew it was only a matter of time before they started asking questions she couldn't answer. On the 5th day, Jae-sung didn't wait in the car. He was standing outside the preschool when Yuna arrived to pick up the boys. Her heart stopped. He looked different in the daylight. Less like the cold, untouchable crime lord she remembered, and more like the boy she had fallen in love with. Vulnerable beneath the armor, human beneath the power. But she couldn't afford to see him that way. Not now. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice low and furious. "I want to meet them." "No." "Yuna." "I said no, Jae." Her hands trembled as she crossed her arms, a barrier between him and the school doors. "You can't just show up and demand to be part of their lives. It doesn't work like that." "Then tell me how it works." His voice was quiet, steady, not commanding, not threatening, just asking, and that was worse. Because it reminded her of the man she had loved. The one who had held her like she was the only thing that mattered. The one who had kissed her forehead and promised her forever. Before forever ended. "You can't be in their lives, Jae," Yuna said, her voice breaking. "Not the way you are now. Not with your world. Not with the danger that follows you everywhere you go. Then I'll change." She laughed, bitter and broken. "Change? Men like you don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are." Jae-sung stepped closer, his eyes burning with something raw and unguarded. "I didn't know about them, Yuna. If I had known—" "What?" She interrupted, her voice rising. "You would have stayed? You would have given up everything you've built? Your power? Your empire?" "Yes." The word was a gunshot. Yuna stared at him, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and hope. "You're lying. I'm not. You don't know how to be anything other than what you are, Jae. You don't know how to be soft. How to be safe. How to be a father." His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "Then teach me." The preschool doors opened, and the sound of children's laughter spilled into the air. Yuna's sons appeared, their small backpacks bouncing as they ran toward her. "Mama!" She caught them in her arms, holding them tight, her heart shattering and rebuilding all at once. And when she looked up, Jae-sung was staring at them. Not with the cold, calculating gaze of a crime lord, but with the shattered, desperate eyes of a man who had just realized what he had lost. Teo noticed him first. "Mama, who's that?" Yuna's throat closed. She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. Jae-sung crouched down slowly, bringing himself to their level, his movements careful and deliberate. "Hi," he said softly. The boys stared at him, their identical faces tilted in curiosity. You're the man in the car, Min-jae, the middle triplet, said matter-of-factly. Jae-sung's lips twitched into the ghost of a smile. I am. Why do you watch us? Sung-ho, the youngest, asked, his voice small and uncertain. Jae-sung's gaze flickered to Yuna, then back to the boys. Because... He paused, searching for words he had never needed before. Because I wanted to make sure you were safe. Are we in danger? Teo asked, his small hand reaching for Yuna's. No, Jae-sung said firmly. Not anymore. Yuna pulled her sons closer, her voice sharp. We need to go. She didn't wait for his response. She just turned and walked away, her boy's small hands in hers, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. But she felt his eyes on her back, and she knew, with a certainty that terrified her, that this wasn't over. That night, Isabella showed up at Yuna's apartment. She didn't knock. She just appeared in the building's lobby, her designer coat draped over her shoulders like a queen surveying a slum. Yuna froze when she saw her through the glass doors. She had seen Isabella's face in magazines, in society pages, in the background of photos taken at elite events where Jae-sung stood like a king among mortals. She was everything Yuna wasn't. Polished, powerful, perfect. Isabella's eyes locked onto her, cold and assessing. Then she pushed through the door. Yuna Park. It wasn't a question. Yuna straightened her shoulders, refusing to shrink beneath the weight of Isabella's gaze. Can I help you? Isabella's smile was sharp as glass. I'm Isabella Laurent, Jae-sung's fiancée. The word landed like a punch. Fiancé, of course. Of course he had moved on, built a new life, found someone who fit into his world in a way Yuna never could. I know who you are, Yuna said quietly. Isabella stepped closer, her heels clicking against the worn linoleum floor. Good. Then you know that whatever little fantasy you're holding on to needs to end. Now. Yuna's jaw tightened. I'm not holding on to anything. Really? Isabella's eyes flickered with disdain. Then why is Jae-sung camped outside your bakery every morning? Why is he asking questions about your sons? Why is he looking at you like you're the only thing that matters? Because we have history, Yuna wanted to say. Because I gave him 3 children he never knew existed. Because no matter how much time passes, some things don't just disappear. But she said none of that. Instead, she met Isabella's gaze head-on. I didn't ask him to come back. I told him to leave. Whatever he's doing, it has nothing to do with me. Isabella laughed, cold and bitter. You really think you can compete with me? With my family's connections? With everything I bring to his empire? I'm not competing with you, Yuna said firmly. I don't want him. Liar. The word hung in the air like poison. Isabella stepped even closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Stay away from him, or I will make sure you and your sons disappear from his life permanently. Yuna's blood ran cold. Are you threatening my children? Isabella's smile widened. I don't make threats. I make promises. She turned and walked away, leaving Yuna standing in the empty lobby, her hands shaking, her mind racing. And for the first time since Jae-sung had reappeared in her life, Yuna realized something terrifying. She wasn't just protecting her sons from his world. She was protecting them from the people who wanted to control it. Jae-sung found out about Isabella's visit within the hour. He was in the middle of a meeting when Min-jun leaned in and whispered the news. His entire body went still. What did she say? I don't have details. But the building's security footage shows a confrontation. Brief. Tense. Jae-sung's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. He stood abruptly, ignoring the surprised looks from the men around the conference table. We're done here. He didn't wait for responses. He just walked out, his mind a storm of fury and control barely held together. Isabella had crossed a line, and she was about to learn exactly what happened to people who threatened what was his. He found Isabella at her penthouse apartment, a glass of wine in her hand, her expression smug and satisfied. She looked up when he entered, her smile lazy and confident. Jay, I was wondering when you'd... What did you say to her? His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Isabella's smile faltered. I simply made our position clear. Our position. Jae-sung stepped closer, his presence filling the room like a gathering storm. You don't have a position, Isabella. Not anymore. She set down her glass, her eyes narrowing. What are you talking about? He pulled the engagement ring from his pocket and placed it on the table between them. We're done. Isabella stared at the ring, then at him, her face going pale. You're joking. I'm not. You're choosing them? Her voice rose, disbelief and fury warring in her tone. 3 children you didn't even know existed a week ago. Yes. The word was final. Isabella laughed, sharp and broken. You're insane. You'll lose everything. Your alliances, your reputation, your empire. Jae-sung met her gaze, his eyes cold and certain. Then I'll build a new one. He turned and walked toward the door. Isabella's voice followed him, trembling with rage. She'll never forgive you, Jae. She'll never let you in. You'll lose her all over again. He paused at the threshold, his hand on the doorframe. Maybe. But at least this time, I'll know I tried. The door closed behind him. And for the first time in 5 years, Jae-sung felt something that had been missing from his life for far too long. Purpose. Yoona didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window of her small apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, her mind replaying Isabella's words over and over again. Stay away from him, or I will make sure you and your sons disappear from his life permanently. The threat shouldn't have mattered. Isabella had no power over her, no connection to her life. But Yoona knew better. She had seen what Jae-sung's world looked like, had felt the weight of it when they were together, had watched him transform from the boy who held her hand in the park to the man who commanded fear with a single look. And Isabella was part of that world, which meant she had resources, connections, ways to hurt people without ever lifting a finger. Yoona wrapped her arms around herself, trying to push away the cold fear creeping through her veins. She had been so careful for 5 years, kept her sons away from danger, away from his world, away from the man who could love them and destroy them in equal measure. And now, in less than a week, everything was unraveling. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. Her heart jumped. It was past midnight. No one should be knocking. She moved quietly to the door, her pulse racing, and looked through the peephole. Jae-sung. He stood in the dim hallway, his hands in his pockets, his face shadowed but unmistakable. Yoona's breath caught. She shouldn't open the door. Shouldn't let him in. Shouldn't risk the fragile balance she had fought so hard to maintain. But her hand moved on its own, turning the lock, pulling the door open just enough to see him fully. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. His eyes met hers, tired and raw. "I heard about Isabella." Yoona's jaw tightened. "Of course you did. I ended it." The words hung in the air between them. Yoona stared at him, her mind struggling to process what he had just said. "You..." "What?" "The engagement. It's over." Her chest constricted. "Why?" Jae-sung stepped closer, but didn't cross the threshold. "Because I can't marry someone who threatens my sons." "My sons." The words hit her like a wave. He said it so easily, so naturally, like they had always been his. "They're not yours, Jae," Yoona said, her voice trembling. "You don't just get to claim them because you ended an engagement. You don't get to walk back into their lives and pretend the last 5 years didn't happen." "I'm not pretending." "Then what are you doing?" He held her gaze, his voice steady and certain. "I'm trying to be what they need. What you need. Even if I don't know how yet." Yoona's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "You can't just change, Jae. You can't just walk away from who you are. From what you've built. Watch me." The conviction in his voice shattered something inside her. Because she wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But she had learned the hard way that wanting something didn't make it real. "Go home, Jae," she whispered. "Not until you hear me. There's nothing to hear." "Yoona, you left me." Her voice cracked, all the pain she had buried for 5 years pouring out in a single breath. You left me pregnant and alone, and I had to figure out how to survive, how to raise 3 boys by myself, how to be enough when I was terrified every single day that I wasn't. Tears spilled down her cheeks now, hot and unstoppable. You don't get to come back and act like a hero, Jay. You don't get to fix this with money or power or promises. You broke me, and I put myself back together without you. Jae-sung's face twisted with something that looked like agony. I know. Then why are you still here? Because I can't stay away. The rawness in his voice stopped her cold. I've tried, he continued, his voice breaking. I've tried to forget you, to move on, to build a life that didn't need you in it. But every empire I built felt empty. Every victory felt hollow. And now that I've seen them, seen our sons, I can't go back to pretending I don't have a reason to be something better. Yuna pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the sob rising in her chest. You can't just be better, Jay. You have to be safe. And your world is anything but safe. Then I'll leave it. She stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. What? I'll leave the organization. Step down. Walk away from all of it. You're lying. I'm not. You can't just walk away from that kind of power, Jay. They won't let you. His jaw tightened. Then I'll make them let me. Yuna shook her head, exhausted and broken. You don't understand. It's not just about you anymore. It's about them. My sons. Your sons. They deserve a father who doesn't put them in danger just by existing. They deserve a father who fights for them, Jae-sung said quietly. And that's what I'm doing. Yuna closed her eyes, her heart torn between hope and fear. I need time. How much time? I don't know. Maybe forever. Jae-sung nodded slowly, accepting her words even as they cut through him. I'll wait. Jay. I'll wait, Yuna, as long as it takes. He turned and walked down the hallway, his footsteps echoing in the silence. And Yuna stood in the doorway, watching him disappear, her heart screaming at her to call him back. But she didn't. Because she didn't know if love was enough to save them, or if it would only destroy them all over again. The next morning, Jae-sung called a meeting. His top lieutenants gathered in the private conference room, their faces wary and uncertain. Min-jun stood at his side, his expression unreadable. I'm stepping down, Jae-sung said without preamble. Silence. Then chaos. You can't be serious. Who will lead? You're just going to abandon everything we've built? Jae-sung raised his hand, and the room fell silent. I'm not abandoning anything. I'm choosing something more important. More important than the organization? One of the older men demanded. Yes. The word was absolute. I have sons, Jae-sung continued, his voice steady. 3 of them. And they deserve a father who isn't looking over his shoulder every day, who doesn't bring danger to their doorstep, who can be present in their lives without fear. You're choosing children you just met over an empire you spent a decade building. Another voice challenged. Jae-sung's eyes hardened. I'm choosing the life I should have had. The life I threw away because I thought power was more important than love. He looked around the room, meeting each man's gaze. I was wrong. Min-jun stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. If you step down, the transition needs to be clean, controlled, or everything we've built will collapse into war. Jae-sung nodded. Then we'll make it clean. I'll hand over leadership to someone I trust, someone strong enough to hold it together. Who? Min-jun asked. Jae-sung met his eyes. You. Min-jun's expression flickered with surprise, then understanding. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made, alliances were secured, power was transferred with precision and care. And by the time the sun set, Jae-sung had begun the process of dismantling the empire he had spent his life building. Not with destruction, but with intention. Because for the first time, he had something worth walking away for. 3 months later. The bakery smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread. warm and comforting in the early morning light. Yuna wiped down the counter, her movements practiced and efficient, her mind wandering to the boys still sleeping upstairs in the small apartment above the shop. Life had settled into a new rhythm. Quiet, steady, safe. Jae-sung had kept his word. He had stepped down from his organization, handed over power, and disappeared from the criminal world as cleanly as a man like him could. And he had waited. Not with pressure, not with demands, but with patience. He showed up once a week, always at a respectful distance, always with a quiet question. Can I see them today? Sometimes Yuna said yes. Sometimes she said no. And he accepted both answers with the same calm grace. Slowly, so slowly she didn't realize it was happening, the boys began to know him. Not as the dangerous man in the black car, but as the man who brought them books, who listened to their stories, who crouched down to their level and spoke to them like they mattered, like they were the most important thing in his world. And maybe they were, because Yuna saw the way he looked at them, like he was memorizing every detail, every laugh, every word, like he was trying to make up for 5 years in every single moment. The bell above the bakery door chimed. Yuna looked up, expecting an early customer. But it was Jae-sung. He stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, his expression open and uncertain in a way she had never seen before. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi." Yuna's heart did something complicated in her chest. "You're early," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "I know, I wanted to ask you something." She set down the cloth and faced him fully. "What?" He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I bought a house." Yuna blinked. "You... what?" "A house, outside the city. Quiet neighborhood, good schools nearby, big backyard." Her breath caught. "Jay, I'm not asking you to move in with me," he said quickly. I'm showing you that I'm serious. That I'm building a life that's safe, stable, real." Tears pricked at her eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that I'm not the man I was. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to let me prove it." Yuna pressed her hand to her chest, trying to steady her racing heart. "I don't know if I can do this, Jay. I don't know if I can let you in and risk everything falling apart again." "Then don't let me in all the way," he said gently. "Just let me stand at the door. Let me be part of their lives, part of your life, however you'll have me." She stared at him, her walls crumbling piece by piece. "You really left everything behind? Everything that didn't matter? And what matters now?" His eyes softened. "You, them, this." He gestured around the small bakery, at the life she had built from nothing. "This matters more than any empire I ever had." Yuna let out a shaky breath. "I'm scared. I know. I'm scared you'll leave again. I'm scared you'll realize this life isn't enough. I'm scared. Yuna." He stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers, his touch gentle and tentative. "I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." She looked down at their joined hands, at the warmth of his palm against hers, at the promise in his grip. And she made a choice. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she was tired of letting fear win. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Okay, you can. You can be part of this, part of us." Jae-sung's entire body seemed to exhale, relief and joy flooding his expression. "Thank you. But if you hurt them, if you hurt us, I won't. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Because losing you once nearly destroyed me, and now that I have a second chance, I'm not going to waste it." Yuna closed her eyes, letting herself feel the truth in his words. And for the first time in 5 years, she let herself hope. 6 months later, the backyard was filled with laughter. Tai-oh, Min-jae, and Sung-ho ran through the grass, their identical faces bright with joy, their small hands clutching the kites Jae-sung had bought them. Yuna sat on the porch steps, watching them, her heart so full it ached. Jae-sung sat beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, his eyes following their son's with a softness she had once thought impossible. "They're happy," she said quietly. "They are. Are you?" He turned to look at her, his expression open and honest. "I didn't know what happiness was until now." Yuna's chest tightened. "You gave up so much." "I gained everything." She leaned her head against his shoulder, letting herself rest in the warmth of his presence. "Do you ever regret it?" "Never." The word was certain. Final. Teo ran up to them, his face flushed and excited. "Papa, did you see how high my kite went?" Jae-sung's entire face lit up. "I did. You're a natural." Teo beamed, then ran back to his brothers, his laughter echoing through the yard. Yuna smiled, her eyes wet with happy tears. "He called you Papa." Jae-sung's voice was thick with emotion. "I know." She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "You're a good father, Jae." He looked at her, his eyes shining. "I'm trying." "You're succeeding." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their sons play, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. And in that moment, Yuna realized something. She had spent 5 years building a life out of survival. But now, with Jae-sung beside her, and their sons running free in the grass, she was finally building a life out of love. And it was more than enough. It was everything. Love K-dramas and romantic stories? Step into the Romance Audio Club. Experience full romantic series in thrilling parts each month. Unlock your bonus story, and join a VIP community of fellow romance fans. Don't miss the next chapter of your favorite love story. Scan the QR code now and start your adventure today. Love K-dramas and romantic stories? Step into the Romance Audio Club. Experience full romantic series in thrilling parts each month. Unlock your bonus story, and join a VIP community of fellow romance fans. Don't miss the next chapter of your favorite love story. Scan the QR code now and start your adventure today.